Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from? Let's see which city shows up the most. You never expect peace to turn into a war. Not when you're living on a ranch that's been in your family for generations. Quiet mornings. Open land. Birds instead of traffic. That was my life. I grew up riding horses along that dusty road that leads to the front gate. My grandfather carved it out himself with nothing but a tractor and a strong will. For decades, it was just us and the land. No neighbors. No drama. Just freedom. Then things started changing. New developments started popping up in the distance. At first, I didn't think much of it. A couple houses. Then a dozen. Then a full neighborhood. They called it Hollow Creek Estates. Fancy name, small lots, tightly packed homes. You could throw a football from one backyard to the next. They even put up a sign by the main road, all glossy and proud. Still I stayed quiet. They were miles away from my land. Or so I thought. It was a regular Tuesday when I drove out toward town and noticed something odd. A crew was out near the access road, my access road. Trucks, workers, piles of fencing stacked on the side. I pulled over, got out, and asked one of them what they were doing. He looked at a clipboard and said, "We're putting up a perimeter fence for the HOA. Shouldn't take more than a day." I blinked. "This is private property. That road leads to my ranch." The guy just shrugged. "We were told this stretch belongs to the Hollow Creek HOA. I was stunned. This wasn't some random path, it was the only way to my house. The only drivable road that cut across a little corner of their new community to reach my ranch gate. And they were fencing it off like it was theirs. I drove around the long way through back trails and rough terrain just to get home. Dust was everywhere, my truck rattling over rocks that hadn't been touched in years. It wasn't safe. It wasn't reasonable. I thought it had to be a mistake. So I called the HOA office. They answered after several tries, the kind of bored voice that makes you feel like you're already wrong before you speak. I explained who I was. Told them they must have put up the fence on land that didn't belong to them. There was a pause. Then she said, "According to our records, that area is designated as shared community access. It falls under HOA maintenance now." "What records?" I asked. "Because I've got the original deed." She just repeated, "If you have an issue, feel free to file a complaint with the board." Click. That's when I knew this wasn't just a mistake. This was power. Control. A group of people sitting in freshly built houses, sipping iced coffee behind walls they didn't pay to build, deciding what was theirs and what wasn't. I wasn't just blocked from my land. I was being erased from it. A few days later, the fence was finished. A long black barrier stretching across the road like a slap in the face. They even put a little sign on it, "Private HOA property. No through traffic." I stood there just staring at it. My own land on the other side. I could see the outline of my house through the trees. The barn. The field. All of it just beyond that fence. Like a cruel joke. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept going over every conversation in my head. The workers. The woman on the phone. The smug little sign. All of it felt so wrong. I went back and looked through every paper my grandfather ever saved. Property maps. Deeds. Survey notes. It was all there, filed neatly in old manila folders, the kind that smell like time. And there it was, in black and white. The road was on our land. It was part of the original parcel. Always had been. Just a tiny sliver that stretched through what was now their neighborhood. But still, 100% ours. The next morning, I went to the county records office. Spent hours digging through public maps. Confirmed everything. Even pulled aerial photos showing the road existed before their development was ever approved. I thought that would be enough. I thought I could go back to the HOA and explain it, show them the truth, and they'd take down the fence. But they didn't. I sent them copies of the documents. Called again. No response. Wrote a certified letter. Nothing. Then came the warning. A legal notice showed up in my mailbox. From the HOA. Accusing me of trespassing anytime I entered through the fence gate. Can you imagine that? Trespassing on the very land your grandfather built a home on? That's when the anger truly set in. Not just for the injustice, but for how easily people could lie, cheat, and bully when they wore the right title. I started having to take the long trail in and out of the ranch every day. Lost hours. Wrecked tires. Missed deliveries. Friends stopped visiting because they couldn't find a clear way in. Even the vet turned around once when he couldn't get through. Everything I had worked to protect, the animals, the land, the history, was suffering because some neighborhood board decided they could redraw reality with a fence. I felt powerless. But only for a moment. Because buried in all that frustration there was still one thing I had. The truth. And once you've got that on your side, there's always a way. I sat at the kitchen table, same place my grandfather always sat, staring at those old papers. The deed. The survey map. That old photograph of him standing next to the very gate the HOA had now fenced off. It wasn't just frustration anymore. It was something deeper. A fire in my chest that wouldn't go away. I had tried the polite way. I had asked. I had shown proof. I had even waited for them to fix their mistake. But now I was done waiting. They wanted to act like the road was theirs? Fine. Let's play that game. But this time I was going to play it by the book. Every word, every rule, every legal clause I could find. I drove down to the county clerk's office again. This time I wasn't just looking for maps. I was looking for leverage. I sat with a quiet woman behind a small desk in records. I handed her my documents and said, I need to know exactly what I can and can't do with the road on my land. She took her time. Read every line. Pulled up a few digital documents, cross-checked dates and plot boundaries. She didn't say much at first. Just nodded a few times. Then she looked up and said, It's your land. That road? It's not public. Never was. They're using it, but it's yours. That was the moment everything shifted. If they wanted to cross my land, they'd have to pay. Simple as that. The law was on my side. The road wasn't dedicated to public access. And there were no easements on file. That meant every car, bike, stroller, or delivery truck passing through was technically using private property. My property. So I got to work. First, I installed a gate. Not like the old wooden one my grandfather had. This one was steel. Heavy. Controlled by a keypad and an automatic opener. It swung with slow, dramatic weight like it meant business. Then I put up signs. Clean, bold lettering. Private property, toll access required. I set the toll at $5 per vehicle. Cheap really? I wasn't trying to rob anyone. I just wanted them to know they couldn't walk all over me. I opened a small bank account and registered a toll payment service. People could pay online or drop cash into a secure box at the gate. It was all legal. All documented. The very next morning the emails started rolling in. At first they were confused. A few were angry. Some thought it was a prank. Others demanded I remove the gate immediately. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. By noon, someone from the HOA showed up. A tall man in a suit that didn't fit quite right. He knocked on the gate, called out my name like we were old friends. I stayed calm. He introduced himself as the community manager, whatever that meant. He said the gate was obstructing traffic and creating a safety concern. I smiled and said, No, it's protecting my land. This road is mine. Always has been. He started arguing about easements and neighborhood access. I handed him a printed copy of the property survey with the county seal. I watched his face tighten as he read it. This is going to cause a problem, he said. It already did, I replied. They tried to file a cease and desist letter. Their lawyer sent some official-sounding document filled with long sentences and threats. But I had my own lawyer now, a quiet, sharp man who had spent decades defending property owners from people just like them. He fired back a response in less than 24 hours. Cited every code, every record, every legal document we had. The HOA didn't respond after that. Not directly. But their members sure did. Within a week, cars were lining up at the gate. Some refused to pay, honking like that would change anything. Others called the number listed, thinking they could negotiate. A few neighbors actually paid, quietly, no fuss, just wanted to get home. Then came the media. A small local blog picked up the story. Rancher turns HOA fence into toll road after property dispute. It spread faster than I expected. People started taking sides online. Most of them cheered me on. Called it a genius move. Others, mostly HOA defenders, said I was being unreasonable. But I didn't care about the noise. I just watched the toll payments roll in. Every day more cars. More people finally realizing this wasn't just some forgotten dirt road. It was mine. The HOA tried to hold a special meeting. Voted on whether they could legally challenge the toll gate. Turns out they didn't have the grounds. Too many board members backed out when they saw the legal proof. Some even apologized. Quietly, of course. No one wants to admit they backed the wrong side. One evening, I sat by the fence, sipping coffee from an old thermos. The sun was going down. Long orange shadows stretched across the fields. I watched as a silver SUV pulled up to the gate. The driver rolled down his window, reached out, and dropped a $5 bill into the box. He didn't say anything. Just gave me a quick nod before driving through. I nodded back. Every time I heard the gate open now, it felt like a win. Not just for me, but for everyone who's ever been pushed around by a group that thought they had more power than they really did. Some days I thought about tearing down the whole gate and letting things go back to the way they were. But then I remembered how they treated me. How they built a fence across my land and called it theirs. How they threatened me, ignored me, tried to erase my history with paperwork and meetings. No, they needed to feel this. Not out of revenge, but out of principle. Because the land doesn't lie. The truth doesn't change just because someone built a neighborhood around it. And no amount of fences or fancy titles can rewrite a deed that's older than their entire street. The toll road stayed. And with every car that passed through, every beep of that gate opening, it reminded them, and me, who really owned the road. Word started spreading faster than I could have imagined. Not just around the neighborhood but into town. People I'd never met started stopping by. Some just came to see the toll gate. Others asked questions, curious like it was some kind of tourist spot. It felt strange. This quiet ranch, tucked away in the hills, had never been in the spotlight before. Now folks were sharing photos of my gate on social media like it was a monument. The attention was both amusing and overwhelming. But I stayed grounded. I reminded myself why I built that gate in the first place. Then the real fallout started. The HOA couldn't ignore me anymore. The toll wasn't just a gate, it had become a symbol. Their own members were frustrated. Not at me but at the people in charge. I heard stories from inside, whispers about board meetings turning heated. Neighbors arguing over who approved the fence in the first place. Some even demanded resignations. One afternoon I got a letter hand-delivered in an envelope with the HOA's logo. It was much more polite than the last one. It said they wanted to open a discussion about access. Said they recognized the unique situation and wanted to find a mutual solution. I read it twice. Then I left it on the table and went back outside. They weren't offering a solution because they cared. They were offering it because they had no choice. The pressure was building on their side now. And not just from within their little committee. Delivery services were struggling. Food drop-offs were delayed. Amazon trucks had to pay the toll, and you better believe that caused a storm of complaints. Real estate agents started pulling listings. New buyers didn't like the idea of paying to get to their homes. One of the newer families even knocked on my door. A young couple with a toddler. They were polite, kind. Said they had no idea about the dispute when they moved in. The husband held out a folded map he had printed. Asked if I could show him exactly where the property lines were. We stood outside for nearly an hour. I walked him through the old markers, explained how the land had been shaped long before the neighborhood existed. He listened, took notes, thanked me, and they left without protest. That night I thought about something my grandfather used to say. Respect the land and it'll respect you back. Disrespect it and you'll learn fast who's in charge. It hit differently now. Weeks went by. The gate stayed. The payments continued. I didn't get rich off it, not even close. But that wasn't the point. It was never about money. It was about standing up for what was rightfully mine. About refusing to be bullied by an organization with letterheads and titles but no respect. Then one morning I woke up and everything was quiet. Too quiet. I walked down to the gate, coffee in hand. And that's when I saw it. The fence, their fence, was gone. All of it. The black metal barrier they had installed, the one that cut through my road like a scar, had been taken down. No crews. No announcements. Just gone. All that remained were some holes in the dirt where the posts used to be. I stood there for a long while. Didn't say anything. Didn't move. It wasn't a celebration kind of moment. It was quieter than that. Heavier. Like watching a storm finally pass after months of dark clouds. The road looked like it did before. Open. Unbroken. Free. A few days later, another envelope arrived. This one was simple. A short letter from the HOA, stating that after internal review, they had removed the fence and would no longer pursue any claim over the road. No apology. No admission of wrongdoing. Just a quiet retreat. I folded the letter and slid it into a drawer. Somewhere next to the old property maps and that photo of my grandfather by the gate. Things slowly went back to normal, or something close to it. The gate stayed up. But now it opened freely for locals. People who had been kind, respectful, or simply caught in the middle. I added a list of approved users to the system. No toll required. Just a bit of trust. Funny how fast power shifts when truth is on your side. The HOA still existed. They still held their meetings and sent out newsletters. But they didn't bother me anymore. Not even a glance. It was as if they finally understood that some lines shouldn't be crossed. Not with fences, not with paper, not with pride. Sometimes I'd still sit out by the road in the early evening. Just like before. The sun would stretch across the land, casting that soft, golden light over the hills. I'd sip coffee and listen to the wind move through the grass. And every once in a while a car would roll up. Someone new. Someone who heard the story and wanted to see the toll gate for themselves. They'd wave, maybe say a few words, and I'd wave back. Then they'd drive off, the gate swinging open slow and smooth behind them. That gate wasn't just metal and wires anymore. It stood for something. A reminder that no matter how big or loud someone thinks they are, there's still a place for people who stand their ground. And if they ever forget, well, the road is still there. And so is the gate.